Greetings, everyone. I hope you're doing real well. I just wanted to talk very briefly about used vehicles and the condition thereof here in the clown world as conditions continue to deteriorate out there. Okay, I'm out here working today on turning a pickup truck, well, the back 2/3 of one, into a trailer. I don't really need another trailer, and I did not purchase the vehicle with the intent to make it into one. The situation is that I needed kind of a beater work truck. You know, it didn't have to be fancy, but it did have to be reliable. I bought one, and I found out that the boomer I bought it from, the previous owner, failed to disclose that it had an overheating issue. And I did fix the overheating issue. However, before I fixed it, it overheated a whole bunch of times on me, sometimes quite severely, and obviously I bought it, you know, having that problem, so there's no way to know how badly and how often it overheated prior to that, but you can see where this story is going. I go to drive this thing one day, and I go to check the oil, and it is completely full of coolant. Just disgusting milkshake of death. Anyway, long story short, this thing was old enough. It was not worth doing an engine transplant in. That make and model of truck you can buy running and driving right now for $1,800 asking price on online classifieds. Okay, and just a proper replacement engine is like $2,400 from a remanufacturer. Okay, I know some people will be like, well, you could just put a junkyard special in there. Yeah, I could. Okay, but you know, that's going to take me a solid week to do, and that's a bigger gamble than I want to take on, you know. And anyway, this isn't important. Here's the point of this message, all right? Okay, and it's not even to say that although I did go hard on the everything is a scam clickbait, it seems more and more with each passing day that yes, everything is somehow a scam, and this is just another example of that. Okay, here's the first point I want to make. The reason why I bought this stupid thing is because I had another work truck prior to this that was actually quite nice. All right, it was very solid. It was almost entirely rust-free, 100% reliable, even got very good mileage for being what it is. Okay, and I'm not going to put, you know, brand, make, and model in here because otherwise all the 12-year-olds will say a bunch of stupid stuff. And, you know, this is about the entire auto market as a whole, not, you know, fanboyism. Okay, so I had this vehicle. It was excellent, all right? Really liked this thing. Drove nice. You know, it's just everything about it was great. The issue is, unfortunately, the transfer case rage quit one day and launched some pieces out through the side of it. And you say, okay, well, it's just a transfer case. Well, why didn't you just replace it? And I promise I'm going somewhere with all this, okay? Well, the reason why is because there were some other smaller issues with that vehicle. What it really needed was a parts vehicle, okay? And that was not an especially common year, make, and model of a vehicle, okay? So by the time I procured a suitable parts vehicle and then actually got it to my place, because this isn't the sort of deal where, you know, there's a whole bunch of them immediately around, because like I said, it's not that common. Okay, by the time I had done that, I would be looking at easily a couple $1,000s. I mean, easily $2,000. Okay, so looking at the vehicle market, I was like, well, you know, I can spend $2,000 doing that, and then, you know, however long it takes to actually swap this stuff, which me not being that much of a gearhead, especially on non-farm equipment, is somewhat of a serious undertaking, okay? So I was like, well, you know, I'll just spend like $3,000 and buy another box. So that's what I did. All right. And then this box was a bit more box than I bargained for. Okay. So here's the first point that I want to make with all this. It's really worth something to know what you've got. All right. I knew what I had previously, you know, with that last vehicle that blew the transfer case. I knew that thing was solid. I knew all of its quirks. I knew what it was, and I knew what it wasn't. That's worth something. When you buy, especially in the context of like a work vehicle, or if you're younger and you're listening to this, it might be like your first vehicle or something. You really have no idea what you're getting when you buy stuff used. Okay, so don't do what I did. Learn from my mistake here. Don't say, well, it's $2,000 to fix this thing or $3,000 grand for another one. No, it isn't. Okay, it's $2,000 to fix something that I know what I've got, and I know that it's solid, and I know that the rest of it works well. And then it's $3,000 for a mystery meat special that you really don't know what you're getting. I mean, it might be great. The last one was excellent. This one, not so much. All right. So that just knowing what you have is worth something. Okay, so if you've got a situation where something, needs an engine or it needs a transmission, but the rest of the vehicle is solid, okay, even though, you might be spending the cost to fix what you have about the same as what it would cost to just buy another one, you're still, in my opinion, better off fixing what you've got. If there's one lesson I've learned, it's always better to fix what you have. Like, not even trying to LARP as a grandpa here, but pretty much every time that I had the opportunity to fix something that was, decent and make it better, and I got something else, whatever the other thing was didn't work out as well as I hoped, and I wished, looking back, that I had just fixed whatever I had. Okay, so there's that. And here's the other thing. Lots of people have conventional logic about such things, but over recent years, that's kind of gone out the window. Okay, like I heard one guy, he was talking about, the only thing I drive is $5,000 pickup trucks, but the problem is each time I buy one with, each passing few years, it's got an extra 30,000 miles prior to the $5,000 pickup trucks 3 years ago. They're a few years older than they were, than what that money would buy you previously. Okay, like obviously the purchasing power of currency drops hourly at this point. Okay, and that's not new. People think it is. That's been going on since about 1913, but I'm not going to drop that red pill into this. A lot of you guys already know that. But anyway, the situation is, if you got, let's say, $5,000, like what that guy said, if you got $5,000 to dump into vehicles, that's not going to buy you the same thing that it did previously. And as conditions out there deteriorate, if you're looking at stuff in the used market, it's only going to get crappier with each passing year. All right. The vehicles on the road are only going to get older as things continue at the current rate. All right. People aren't buying stuff new like they once did. I vaguely remember, I'm not that old. Okay. I vaguely remember when I was a kid, like elementary school age, and a lot of families back then would still trade off vehicles every 100,000 miles. Okay, now that was a little bit of an undertaking. Okay, it took a little financial planning on the part of the parents. Okay, but that was attainable. That was the kind of thing that if you set your mind to, it really wasn't that hard to accomplish on middle class income at the time. Okay, and like I said, I am not that old. All right, now that's pretty much unthinkable. I remember, when I was in high school, people driving vehicles that are like mid-90s, early 2000s, and I still see a lot of mid-90s and early 2000s vehicles out. They're still out there, okay? My point is, as conditions continue to deteriorate, your options for what's in the used vehicle market are only going to get crappier, dollar for dollar. Okay, so, you got that going on. I think if someone has a good income and they don't want to fuck with all the time, it's really worthwhile to just buy something new if you can find, there's not really deals on stuff, but if you can get something and then just take care of it, all right, that used vehicles are not the money saver that they used to be. Let's just put it that way. But I guess the point of this is to say that it's really best at this point if you just try to keep whatever you have going. All right, obviously there's going to be situations where you can't do that. If you got an excellent half-ton vehicle and, your situation changes, so now you need the pulling power, the hauling power of like a 3/4 ton or something. Okay, there's only so much you can do about that. All right. But if there's any way that you can keep what you have going, it's definitely worthwhile to do that. The used vehicle market is not what it used to be, and it's in conditions out there and options that are really only going to get crappier for the foreseeable future. Now, here's the other thing I want to talk about here. This is something a lot of people haven't realized. It is incredibly expensive just in terms of logistics to buy a vehicle, okay? Like, I know this sounds obvious, but hear me out. If you're looking at something online, let's say it's 3 hours from where you live. All right, that's 6 hours round trip there, plus an hour to look at the thing, plus an hour for that, it just vanishes. Okay, that's 8 hours gone. All right. you need to value your time there. That's easily, you know, let's say $160 right there of your time, plus fuel, plus the cost of lunch, plus wear and tear on, you know, the vehicle, whoever you get to drive there, if you have a second one, whatever. Okay, you're easily out $200 or $250 just going to look at this thing. Okay, and this beater 2/3 of a farm truck that I'm looking at right now, this thing costs about $350 to register. Okay, people who constantly trade off vehicles, or they have like a yard full of them, that adds up. That is extremely expensive. And here's the other thing. I have very rarely have I bought any kind of vehicle and not had some kind of problem during the there's always a problem. Okay, you get there and there's some undisclosed damage that the person just conveniently didn't list. You get there and the title is in someone else's name. You get there and there's some form of paperwork issue. Let me tell you guys a true story about this, okay? I bought a trailer and I took the paperwork from that. I bought it from an individual because, you know, I'm a cheapskate, right? I try to buy everything used. I bought this thing. I take the paperwork to the, you know, the place you got to register, and they're like, oh, well, you have to get this form. You know, it's not just the normal paperwork, the normal like title registration or whatever. You also have to fill out this other form that has all the same information that's on this, except it's on another form and it's different somehow. But you know, you just have to have this. Like, well, I didn't know that. And they're, well, tough. You know, they are very not helpful at all at this tax office or whatever it's called. Okay. And I'm like, well, you know, I bought this from some guy. Like, this was at least a couple months ago. I have no idea who this person was. It's like an online classified seal. And they're like, well, that's too bad. Guess you can't register it. Like, well, crap. Okay, so I go home and I have to do like full-on detectives work here, okay? Like, I had to petition my cell phone carrier for my own like text message logs from when I was talking to this guy, and they sent me all that. And then I had to call the guy and I'm like, hey, yeah, it's kind of random. You probably don't remember me. You sold me a trailer like a long time ago. And I know you gave me a whole bunch of paperwork, but it turns out there's this other thing too, like this other form you gotta, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I explained the situation. Thankfully, this guy was really cool about it. He's like, yeah, you know, it's been a while since I've bought any kind of vehicle, but I think I do vaguely remember that. It's like some new thing that they just came out with, you know, at this time a year or two prior. And and he was really nice. He like prints off this form, he like mails it. What a pain in the ass, you know. And here's the thing. Almost every single time I've bought a vehicle used, you know, from an individual, there's been some sort of problem like that. Speaking of problems, which there always are when you buy used stuff, okay? Speaking of that, true story. One time a friend of mine was trying to buy a truck, and he specifically asked this person he was talking to, he's like, hey, you've got the title for this thing, and it's in your name, it's ready to go. No it, right? You have this, it's ready. There's not going to be any issues, are there? If I drive all the way out there to look at this thing, I'm not going to have any problems, right? And the guy's like, oh, no, yeah, I definitely got it. Yeah, it's right here. No problem whatsoever. Well, you can see where this is going. We drive like 2 hours to look at this thing, right? I was driving him out here because he had like cash in hand. He was ready to buy this thing, and I was just giving him a ride, right? So we drive like 2 hours to look at this thing, spent a whole bunch of time there dicking with it, looking it over, and he goes to buy it, and the guy doesn't have the fucking title. All that, he doesn't have the fucking title. All right, so my buddy was very angry, let's just say. We leave, and then a few days later, my buddy calls me, he's like, hey, and I'm like, yeah, you know what happened? Did he find the title? And my buddy's like, yeah, he found the title. You know, he messaged me a day or so ago, and he's like, well, we found the title, you know, I'll give it to you for this price again. My friend's like, hell no, you won't. That wasted both of our time for anyway. My friend's like, I'll buy this thing from you, but I'm going to give you $500-600 less than the price was that time we were out there. And if you don't like it, sell it to someone else. And they really didn't like it, but they really needed money. So anyway, that one turned out sort of okay, but that's case in point. There's always a problem when you buy stuff. Always a problem. Okay, there's always something that goes wrong in terms of paperwork or logistics. There's always, anyway, long story short, people a lot of folks, when they go to buy something used, they just, you know, they don't really figure in how much it's really going to cost to handle the logistical side of this, like directly, like the direct cost of transferring the title and doing the registration and everything, and the indirect costs of going and messing with all. I mean, that's easily, if you go look at something and you deal with a problem like that, that's easily like 2 solid days of your working days, productive time of your life gone. Okay, like that's 2 solid days that you could have spent, you know, swapping in the transmission, or, you know, whatever these things are for you. It's just, it's always a pain in the ass having to deal with this. So yet again, I feel it's really best, if at all possible, to just keep whatever you have and keep it going. At this point with used stuff, you know, you got a vehicle that only has 1/3 of its life left, but it costs like 60% of new. I mean, the used stuff isn't that much of a deal. All right, like even if you buy something and, you know, you own it for a while, and then let's say the engine fails at 150,000 miles or whatever, at least at that point, you know what you've got. You know what the rest of the vehicle is like. You know you've taken care of it since the day it was new. You know that everything else should be fine. That makes it a lot more manageable to spend, you know, $2,000, $5,000, $7,000, whatever it is, you know, to replace the engine or whatever. It's just, buying used vehicles is a total pain in the ass. It's only going to get worse as conditions degrade. And like I said, I really think it's best if you can just keep whatever you have on the road, because it's pretty bleak out there. So that's my ramblings for today. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I hope you'll come join us on Telegram, and talk to you next time.